You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your Amac podcast, Better for America. Today with us, we have the privilege to sit down with a member of Congress who is a real standout. But before I introduce our guest, let me note that our sponsor today is Amac Senior Resources. Now, if you folks have not heard of Amac Senior Resources, you may be missing out. If you are searching for the right Medicare plan or access to any A-rated insurance carrier, call Amac Senior Resources Network. That's 1-800-334-9330, 800-334-9330. Now, this organization, Amac Senior Resources Network, I'm quite involved with. I oversee the team, and I can promise you folks, they will deliver what you need when you need it, with a licensed provider who's ready to answer any of your questions. So if you're 65 or older, you probably know that we're right now in this open enrollment period or the annual election period, and you may have questions about changes that you can make to your Medicare. To get those answers, you can give us a call. We've got answers that matter and people that care, offering personalized Medicare guidance. They're ready, reliable, and they're wrapped up around your needs, personalized. So give Amac Senior Resources a call, folks, at 800-334-9330. Folks, I am very excited to have with me Congressman Pfluger out of Texas, the great state of Texas, and I do want to introduce you to him. He is a remarkable congressman. He represents over 209 counties, many of which are under intense pressure right now, since the U.S. southern border and our energy sector are both under pressure. Folks, I can't believe just a few nights ago, I think it was, we heard Jen Psaki say, there are no midnight flights occurring. Folks, we see midnight flights that are occurring. They're loading up planes with lots of children, unaccompanied, without families, without parents. Doesn't this remind you of what our wonderful Vice President Kamala Harris promised, that she would make certain that children were not separated? And she just bashed Trump, didn't she, during those months that she was running for office, and she said to us, look at the terrible atrocities that are occurring at the border. Folks, look what's going on today. AMAC is holding these people accountable, and these are some of the questions that we're going to ask Congressman Pfluger. We want to know what things are like in Texas, and how bad does that crisis seem to be. But we're seeing so much come at us. We're seeing illegal immigration at the border. We're seeing our elections that need to be cleaned up. And we're seeing a government, federal overreach like we've never seen before. Can you imagine that today, right now, there are people on the far left, and what they want to do is control the elections. They want to take power away from the states, and they want a federal takeover of our elections. This is unbelievable. Each and every day that I wake up, folks, I'm seeing a country that looks more and more foreign. It's not the same country that we remember just a few short years ago, or even just a year ago, which is mind-boggling. We see what's happening with America's energy independence. For goodness sakes, unimaginable what we're facing today, and we're hearing from the Biden administration that it's not his problem. Who does he attack? Who is the White House attacking? They're attacking parents. Folks, I've got a letter here from the NSBA. I've mentioned this in an earlier podcast, but parents, if you're listening, grandparents, if you're listening, I want to encourage you, go to our AMAC website, amac.us. We've got a big banner there on the site labeled Critical Race Theory. The reason why parents are rightfully angered is they do not want to see their children indoctrinated at very young ages and being taught things that, quite frankly, goes against everything against the American dream. Here at AMAC, we understand that you people, or members, are some of the most devoted, committed, most patriotic people in America, and probably the most smart people that I've ever met come right from AMAC membership. And the reason for that is we see so much grassroots efforts happening here. We're seeing AMAC members that are really getting involved. They're joining, going down to their local school boards. They're running for their local school board, and we give you a toolkit, information on how to run for your local school board. We also tell you what to look for in your children's education or your grandchildren's education. But folks, if you missed it, The NSBA, I want to take a quick moment here. The NSBA, which is the National School Boards Association, they sent a letter to Joseph R. Biden, the President of the United States, essentially calling out parents as domestic terrorists and encouraging the FBI, among many other organizations, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Secret Service, to all, the U.S. Postal Service, to all get involved and to stop what they're calling this threat against our children. And they're talking about concerned parents. This is absolutely insane that this could be happening here in America. So, folks, we recognize that we need free and fair elections in this country. We need a secure southern border. And we need our children to be taught an education that lines with the values that we hold very dear. And folks, for all of you that have gotten involved, that have spoken up, that have said something to a friend or family member, it matters. It is so important. So thank you. If you haven't checked out the critical race theory information on our website, you really ought to do so, because you can share that with your children, with your neighbors, with your family. You can download, you can print a lot of the literature that we have there, but it really will be very helpful, I think, in your quest to better understand what's being taught in your local schools. We've got to do something big about that. AMAC is working on all fronts. Matter of fact, what's really exciting is I will be down to the southern border myself with my team. We will be down there in the coming weeks. We are going to be there firsthand to bring to you the truth. We'll be taking pictures. We'll be conducting interviews. But it's important that we understand that whatever we're hearing from the administration, however many times they want to tell us that the border is closed, whatever they want to say, oh, there are no late night flights coming, packing children in planes and dropping them off in all areas of our nation. We know the truth. We know what's happening, and we are committed to bringing you the truth. Stay tuned, folks. Coming right back with us is Congressman Pfluger, a great man and a great interview that you don't want to miss. Beyond being a voice of reason, defending America's sovereign border, energy sector, and free markets, he is also an Air Force veteran who served for 2 decades and is a decorated fighter pilot, used to command and knowing firsthand what real responsibility needs. Of special note, this guest is both a patriot and a moral leader, pro-national security, pro-business, and pro-life. His committee assignments range broadly, but include foreign affairs, homeland security, and the intelligence. A very warm welcome to Congressman August Pfluger. Thank you so much for being with us today, Congressman.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to talk about these important issues.
Well, we agree with you, and that is why we're so glad to have you with us today. And I want to jump right into it with a very basic question. From where you sit, Congressman, is America in unusual danger? I mean, we're looking at threats from within, the open borders, Biden's anti-energy independence ideas that are coming out of the White House. There seems to be no apparent fiscal, responsibility. He's got runaway spending, high debt, rising inflation, not to mention what we're seeing out of China and Chinese ambitions. Should we be focusing more on national security, Congressman? And if so, could you give us, and our over 2 million AMAC members have a better peek. By the way, we've got 204,248 members in Texas, over 10,000 AMAC members in your district alone. What needs to be done right now?
Well, any one of those issues that you just mentioned are very concerning by themselves. The crises that we see that are continuing to pop up and are really manufactured by this administration in a lot of cases. They are avoidable. They are certainly crises that we could lead ourselves out of, but we see an administration that is not fixated on what I consider the most important things. And I have 2 simple criteria to start with. Is the president making us more secure? And is the president making us more prosperous? And the answer to that question is no. And you mentioned the things that are so concerning. I believe, and I've said this many times in my district, in Washington, and in other places that are interested in our country continuing to be that shining city on the hill, is that we are entering a period of time where I think we're facing so many threats, economically, militarily. Obviously, terrorism continues to be something that we're extremely worried about. we're in a period of time that we haven't seen that level of threat since World War II or maybe even before. And it's really important that our country understand those threats, that we keep our eye on the ball. And I've been critical on the administration, and I think for good reason, because we have a border crisis that is unlike anything we've ever seen. We have a rising power in China. We have Russia, who is absolutely focused on making sure that they assert their dominance in not only in Europe, but around the world. We have terrorists that want to continue to harm America. And we have criminal organizations, including drug cartels, that are at our southern border and are infiltrating our country. And all of these are extremely concerning.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. I want to segue, if I may, to your role as a veteran, someone who has real experience defending America. I want to thank you for that. I know that you are aware of how important readiness is, senior accountability, and morale. And now what we're watching, it seems to be sort of a steady erosion of respect for the military by the administration, even a lack of accountability at the top. With failed decisions. Look at what we've seen, this botched withdrawal, what I call a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, and even rising suicide rates among veterans. And then they're imposing these social policies like the Marxist critical race theory being pushed on our military. And certainly, I feel to myself, can we really keep going this way? Is there any way to hold the Biden White House and the Pentagon accountable for these failures? Given your background, do you think that this falling morale affects readiness, and how do we reverse this?
Well, I think when we look at Afghanistan, it is a botched withdrawal. What we saw was largely a country, the entire United States, that was, I think, in line with wanting to see an end of our presence there at the levels that we had previously seen it. What we didn't want to see was what happened. And that was Joe Biden's failed leadership in the actual execution of the withdrawal, where we left Americans behind, we left our allies behind, and we left Afghans who had given their blood over the last 2 decades in a very terrible situation at the hands of what has been a terror organization, what we still consider a terror organization. And so when you look at that, the buck stops with the commander in chief. And we need to get to the bottom of what advice was given. And it has been suggested by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and even in some cases by the Secretary of Defense, that the advice that was given was not actually followed. President Biden has refuted that. He said he followed the advice that they gave him. We need to get to the bottom of that. What advice did they give? How was it considered? Did we have an intelligence failure? Was it an execution failure? Or maybe a little bit of both? What I want to say is that the men and women who are serving, especially those who are doing the job every single day, thank you for your service, because they are heroes. They have done the lion's share of the work, and we never would have seen the success that we saw with the terrible plans that Biden had in getting people out if it hadn't have been for their service, their professionalism. So the buck stops with the commander in chief, in my mind, and the president is complicit when it comes to the failed in the botched withdrawal.
Yeah, our AMAC members agree with you entirely there, that he is sort of trying to tell the American public a different story, but in fact, we're smarter than that, and we do see what's happening. Congressman, I want to bring things back home. I want to talk about our southern border. I would like to share with our AMAC members a video of you at the U.S. southern border right here, right now.
You can see the tragedy coming across the Weir Dam. We're about 100 yards away from the International Bridge in Del Rio. Over 14,800 people as of this morning, up from 12,000, up from 10,000. And this week, we have surged from 1 to 2,000 to 14,000. This is a crisis. We need the administration to call it a crisis, to take action, not just here, but all along our southern border, where we're going to have 2 million people, illegal immigrants, that are documented. That doesn't include the gotaways. It doesn't include the known or suspected terrorists. We need the administration to do something right now.
So, Congressman, what is your level of concern and the indifference that the Biden-Harris White House has shown toward border protection, really endangering the people of Texas and Americans across the country? We're seeing illegal drugs and crime, disease, et cetera. Is this border breakdown as serious as it really looks?
I think it's as serious and even more serious than people can imagine. By the end of this year, we're going to have 2 million people who have been apprehended, illegal immigrants who have been apprehended at the southern border. That does not include the number of gotaways, and that those are the people who we don't know about. The outgoing Border Patrol chief, Rodney Scott, who served in 5 administrations, Republican and Democrat alike, said that the number of known or suspected terrorists is at a record level. Now, that should scare every American. And meanwhile, you have a Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, and the President of the United States, who has appointed the Vice President, Kamala Harris, to be the border czar. And not once, not a single time, has she been to the spots on the border where the hemorrhaging is happening at record numbers. I was recently in Del Rio. I've been to the border many times, and I was recently there when we had a surge of 15,000 Haitians. And the reason that we had them under that bridge, and everybody knows those pictures, is because the policies that the president overturned on day one, those that President Trump implemented, that he knew were working, that kept our country safe and secure, those have directly led, those failed policies that Biden has done have directly led to a communication network with cartels and drug traffickers who are taking advantage of this situation because they know that the Biden administration is not enforcing the law. The country is a country of law and order. We have to enforce those laws. We don't need new laws. We just need to enforce the ones that we have. And it's worse than I think anybody can imagine. And when you consider the amount of drugs that are entering this country, we should all be worried because now every state is a border state. It's not just Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California. Every state is a border state. This is a massive crisis that the president is directly responsible for.
Sure is. We're hearing about these midnight flights of younger folks, children that are being, transported all across the nation here in New York, upstate New York, areas that are not necessarily border state areas. And folks are recognizing that you can't just put a Band-Aid on this. This is something that's much bigger. And we demand as people, we demand that our government be accountable and be transparent and offer us the truth so that we can better understand how to tackle things. So a lot of us here at AMAC, we are scratching our heads, wondering why some of the really good policies that Trump had in place are not put back in place, and why they are treating those that are coming over illegally much differently than they're treating the American taxpayer who's looking to do all things right, including, do everything we can to sort of make sure that we've got this virus under control here. So an open border doesn't help that. And as a mother, Congressman, it breaks my heart. I see these children and young people that are being separated from families. We know that that's part of all of this, but these children that are being human trafficked, and not only children, but adults that are being taken advantage of. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart. So I want to thank you so much for that insight. And I want to thank you for being there and for reporting the truth and for all that you're doing to really battle that threat. I do want to shift slightly to another issue that is also close to home and to your district. We're not only seeing inflation driven by excessive federal spending, but we're seeing the effects of Biden's nonstop attack on America's energy sector. Energy independence. And on it's just mind-boggling. It's, to me, inexcusable. It's another ideological attack. It's trying to hurt Americans who produce oil and gas, but also those in places like New England and across the country this winter who will depend on heating oil to stay safe and stay warm. So the reality is that this seems to be a terrible injustice on the attack of the very sector that powers so much of what we do and how we live. So I'd like to ask you, how do you see this attack on energy independence? And is there any excuse for this? Is this a major mistake, in your opinion?
I think it's just like the other crises that we see. And these are self-inflicted wounds that the administration, through their failed policies, has led us into a position now where when you consider one of the very first executive orders that President Biden issued, it was the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline. And let me remind people that this is transporting oil and gas from Canada through the United States to the Gulf of Mexico so that we can export that, so that we can use it here in our own refineries and have North American produced oil and gas and be self-sufficient and not dependent on other countries, which for the last 2 years in my district, the Permian Basin, is the #1 producer of oil and gas in the entire country. And in fact, produces 40% of the country's oil. Now that is a tremendous amount when you consider that we are producing affordable, reliable energy, lowering the cost to every single American. And we have what our allies and our partners around the world want and what they need. Look at Europe. Number one, while we canceled the Keystone Pipeline, President Biden, he green-lighted the Nord Stream pipeline that Russia is going to hold hostage Eastern European countries. Number two, gas prices in Russia right now are 5 times what they are. This is natural gas, 5 times what they are here in the United States. And we're going to enter the winter season. We haven't even entered the peak demand season in Europe and certainly here in the United States. And we're going to enter that season knowing that demand is going to continue to increase, that prices are skyrocketing, that the inflationary pressures, which the Biden administration is solely responsible for here, and then you look at the policies that are taking place in Europe, this is only going to get worse. What President Trump got right is he let innovation, he let small businesses, he let everyday Americans do what we do best, and that is go to work, provide for their families, and produce what the economy needs. What President Biden is doing is exactly the opposite. He is shutting down this economy with an overregulated government approach, and he's going to make it more difficult every single day for businesses to survive. You cannot tell you how many businesses I talk to, and they tell me the price of goods, the price of fuel, the price of everything is through the roof. We can't conduct our normal everyday business because all of those things, those pressures are so high, not to mention the fact that we have a labor shortage because the Biden administration is paying people to stay at home. You shouldn't have to compete with Uncle Sam for labor. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And when it comes to the energy crisis, this is really going to be the tipping point, I think, where Americans, they know and they understand that this administration is not keeping us more secure and they are not keeping us more prosperous.
Well, Congressman, your leadership, your background, it's very impressive, and AMAC members appreciate you. We all do here, and it really is heartening to hear you say the truth. AMAC's more than 2 million members are really grateful, and we know that these battles really do matter. I have one last question. I know you need to run. Real quickly, I know that you are a moral leader and that you are pro-life, and we have a huge proportion of our AMAC members, overwhelmingly, who deeply respect life. And we are deeply grateful for your courage in this fight. And we often write about it, and we care deeply about that issue. Perhaps if you have just a quick moment, could you offer us insight into the importance of this issue to you, why it matters to you, and why it really should matter to all Americans of good heart? I think that, we may see a Supreme Court decision this year that could directly affect the pro-abortion Roe v. Wade decision, and many of our members would love to see that decision overturned. Can you offer your views, please, on that, on that issue?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. And it's such an important, just fundamental piece of American society that we need to get right. And I believe that life begins at conception. I appreciate the views of AMAC and your membership and where you stand on these issues. And this is what's so concerning with what Nancy Pelosi is doing in the House, is that for the very first time in decades since the Hyde Amendment was introduced, we now have a reconciliation bill that we are currently fighting against and pushing back against and trying to gather moderate Democrats' support to push back on. That for the very first time, they don't want to include the Hyde Amendment, which would allow, and which is by her direction, to have taxpayer-funded abortion. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with Democrats' agenda, and their radical spending is enough, but now to not consider the fact that there are millions of innocent children who are murdered. And she wants that to continue all the way up and even maybe just after birth. And as a country, we have to look at this as a moral obligation to make sure that we are taking care of those innocent voices, those that don't have a voice, who can't voice their concerns for themselves. When you hear stories of children who have maybe been born into situations that were really tough and they witness their story, every human was designed uniquely by God. Every single person has a purpose. And I believe that God has put us on this earth for all of us to witness in different ways. And those innocent babies need to have a voice. And I think that's what this is really about. And so we are going to continue to push back with everything we have, and leverage those Democrats who claim to be moderate, and to ask them to stand up in their moral views, to stand up for what's right. And we're very hopeful for what the Supreme Court may decide on this very important Roe v. Wade decision. And so what you'll find, I think, in the Republican mindset right now is that whether it's the on-demand abortion that Nancy Pelosi wants to do, the radical spending that she wants, or the higher taxes that she wants to levy on every American, we're not okay with this. And it comes back to those two fundamental questions. Is the President of the United States going to lead our country out of a crisis and into a place where we're more secure and more prosperous? And I know that that's what we as Republicans believe. We believe that this is the greatest country in the world. And the flag that you see behind me, as a veteran myself, and I'd like to say thank you to all the veterans who are members of AMAC, and to your families for sacrificing so much. But this flag is worth fighting for. We are the greatest country on earth. And the liberal media that tells us that we're racist and that we are not a good country and that there's all these problems. Well, guess what? I think most Americans actually look at this country and go, yes, there are things that we can and should do better, and we will. We've been through hard times, but we're going to get through this hard time, and we're going to be even stronger because of it. And I believe that, and I'm going to keep fighting for this American flag, and just appreciate the opportunity to talk with so many patriotic members of AMAC that also believe that very same thing.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you next month. You have been chosen to receive the AMAC Patriot Award, and that is because of your breadth of experience, your proven and unwavering patriotism. I think you've got great, thoughtful reasoning, and you've got a moral compass, and it's the kind of leadership that we need in a time when so much of what we're hearing is really not good news these days. So thank you for the time that you've given our members and your willingness to fight for what is right, as you always have. And we will look forward to seeing you again soon, Congressman. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And let me just encourage everyone to continue to have hope, because even though we're going through a tough time, I do have hope. And when you look around this country, we've gone through tough times, but let's continue to have hope, because we're going to emerge from this. And that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. What a great honor. And I can't take any credit for it, because there's so many people in this country that believe what I believe. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Well, thank you again. Look forward to seeing you soon, Congressman. Have a wonderful day. And to all of our AMAC members listening today, thank you for tuning in. If you have not downloaded the AMAC News app, you can watch and listen to today's podcast, plus track breaking news right there from your phone. So please be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, follow, and share wherever you are on social media. It's really simple, folks. Go to your iPhone, go to your app store, and search for AMAC, A-M-A-C. You'll see a red icon. Go ahead and download that icon. We make sure that we don't bombard you with ads. Very simple, free, and easy to use, easy to share. Folks, you will get news that you won't get anywhere else. And our latest addition to the AMAC News app is our AMAC member poll right there on the AMAC News app. So folks, you can take the AMAC member poll on our website, or you can go ahead and download the news app where you gain access to that AMAC member poll each and every week. We take our marching orders from you, which is why it is so important that we get the feedback that we hear from you each and every week. Folks, until next time, I am Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you so much for being here today. God bless you all. And until next time, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.